Okay, here we are on the 18th of the month. Sorry that I missed the other day. Um, the day turned into a strange day anyway, and with this big fire that everyone has heard about. But Baruch Hashem, everybody's out, but people were critically injured, and I don't have much more detail about that, but it's quite a disaster and quite a really what they call a conflagration on the block. You know, the flames and Whole Eastern Parkway was closed. All right, so let's bring
Do we have
life.
the names for
No,
Tehillim?
no, we don't. Not yet. At least as of last night when Baylor, we were in the car and Baylor was searching all around for different places. There were no names.
No, there are some names up to daven for.
Okay, there weren't last night. You want to name
Oh,
them?
I can't. Oh no, I just saw them just now.
Okay,
I don't know where I even saw them. Either it was
okay.
on your chat or it was on another
Not,
chat. I can't
not,
remember.
yeah, not
I
on
just
my
saw.
chart.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go. We'll get the names after this, but let's get the general life force, right? The Torah, which gives life to all living creatures, should give life to them, restore them, and to restore anybody who needs refuah. Anybody?
Yehudis Golda Bas Elizahano, Chaim Yaakov Zev Ben Sarah, Yosef Yitzhak Ben Lior, Shoshana Bas Hana, Gary Robertson of George, Yaakov Shaul Ben Hana Miriam, Yehudit Gila Bas Rachulea.
Refuah Shlema. Recorded mamash.
Amen. Also, Aaron Ben Ashaya, Mr. Baruch Ben Mariasha, uh, Simcha Bat Suzanne, Serena Celestine, daughter of George Beale.
Refuah Shlema recorded.
Amen.
You know you're breaking up a lot. I don't know where you are, but
I'm on the beach.
okay. Hopefully you heal our.
I hear you.
Okay,
I
good.
hear you. Thank you.
Okay, Tuvia ben Avram, Refuah Shlema. Yair ben Adela. Mordechai Yehuda ben Chana. You may have said this, but I didn't hear it. Yisrael ben Yamin ben Leah Gittel. Devor Leah bas Rusa Huva Liba. Rivka Mina bas Chaya Esther. Anybody else? Okay, let's move to Hayom Yom 18. Hi. The Tzemach Tzedek told his son, this is the Rebbe Marash, who was the grandfather of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that the mimer which is called Marehem, which begins, it's from Yechezkel. Marehem is the appearance of the holy angels and their deeds. This is a very, not only very fundamental mimer, but it expresses a very fundamental teaching, the whole teaching of the wheels within the wheels, and the Chayas HaKodesh, the holy animals, and the chariot. And that's, as I say, extremely fundamental, and there are many versions of this throughout all the chain of the Rebbeim. So this discourse that they spoke about, the one that's in Torah Or, is from the Tzemach Tzedek in Parshas Yisroi, which we just passed. And this mimer is the first discourse. In other words, the Tzemach Tzedek's version of it is based on the first discourse that the Magi delivered when he assumed leadership of the Hasidim on Shavuos 5521 in 1761. The Alter Rebbe heard the mimer from Reb Mendel Haradokur. Reb Mendel Haradokur is Reb Mendel from Vitebsk, who was the Alter Rebbe's chaver and also the Alter Rebbe's teacher. Which Reb Mendel was the author of Pri HaOretz. Okay, he's a shtickle Rebbe in Chosid, the Mendel from Vitebsk, and he was the one who took the Chasidim to Eretz Yisrael, and I don't know if he founded, but he certainly planted there the Chabad movement in the Holy Land. And he had been present at Shavuos in 5521. However, the Alter Rebbe expounded the mimer in his own style. And that, by the way, is good to know. This is the whole of Hasidus is a histalshalis, is a chain, starting off obviously from the Baal Shem Tov, But there's nothing in that, in any Chassidus, that's going to differ from any, just like there's nothing in the oral Torah which is going to differ from the written Torah, but rather it's a histalshelus and a broadening out and giving certain perspectives on what had already been latent in everything which came before it. Lessons in Tanya. What I'm going to do today, we're going to do Shabbos and today, because we started a new chapter, and there's a nice flow and a few things that I think are worth pointing out, which is always the case, of course. Chapter 25, page 328 in Lessons in Tanya, and in Likutei Moharan, 28 begins the bottom. Not 28, my eyes are deceiving me. 25.
How about, are you going to do Friday?
We're doing, no, I'm not going to go back to Friday. I'm just doing Shabbos. If you have questions on Friday, we can take them up at the end. But Friday, basically, in a real nutshell, was the notion of describing Avodah Zorah and the chiyuv that we have to give up one's life for it, and the notion of there being what we call the cardinal sins, 3 cardinal sins, and there's discussion about Shabbos. You, for instance, Avodah Zorah, you have to give your life up for. Shabbos, on the contrary, you don't. You can violate the Shabbos in order to keep alive, so you can do further mitzvahs. So he discusses the difference between the similarity. On the one hand, don't think there's any particular lightness or about Shabbos, because he brought a piece of from halacha that if a shochet violates Shabbos or any other one of the cardinal sins, his shechita is no good. So Shabbos is on equality with all the cardinal sins. But there is an exception learned about Shabbos in terms of the fact that one can violate Shabbos in order to keep living. So, and all of this was in the context of discussing really the very serious averos. And today, what he's going to do is to tell us that even though those things are hugely serious, some of them, you give up your life for Avodah Zorah, nevertheless, even and I guess the most important point that he introduced there was the notion of the spirit of folly, or the spirit of that brings a person to think that one could be doing these kinds of things and still be connected with one's with one's Yiddishkeit. That there are certain sins that are high of chorus, and that produces a very big difficulty. How do those sins keep living, even though he said in the chapter it produces a death of the soul? We'll leave that aside for the moment. The person person will die early, etc. But at the same time, and what he's moving into now is, even though there is that possibility for a ruach shtus to enter a person has to know that in general and importantly, one's connection with God is really deeper than that. Deeper than the ruach shtus is the connection that we have with Hashem. And this is what he's going to be talking about. So that's sort of a summary, but if you have particular questions on it, we can talk about it later. That's the summary of the previous chapter.
He's doing
Okay. What?
Starting with Shabbos.
Pardon me?
You're starting with Shabbos, correct?
I'm starting with Shabbos, Perek Kuf Hey. Because he wants to bring out that even though everything we said just now, nevertheless, you should know that there's something much deeper than that, which makes it possible to say the following. This is what's written, Ki korev elecha hadava ma'oid. Right? We've asked this question. This is from the frontispiece of the Tanya. That no matter what, even though there may be moments when a spirit of folly, shtus, negativity, so deep that it provokes one to think that one could do something of the seriousness of those cardinal sins. Nevertheless, deeper than that is what the following. And this is deeper than that, is korev elecha, it's close to you. Shebechol es, that second line in Likutei Morim. Shebechol es shebechol shah, because every moment, every time and every moment, biyodei shel odam, the person has the possibility to grasp in the hand of a person in every moment, b'reshusoi, and under the capability of his choice, who is la'ave ruach hashtus, to push away that spirit of folly, that spirit which has brought you, God forbid, to do one of those serious sins. The ability to push them away is always there. To push away that ruach shtus v'hashkachacha. It's interesting. Here they all the versions I have translated folly. Here he gives an interesting definition: shtus and forgetfulness. You forgot that you are always connected with God. So that's another way of looking at the negative aspect of shtus. Shtus v'hashkacha, forgetfulness. So one can always push that away, that spirit of forgetfulness, mikirboy, from within you. Well, lizker, and to remember. Interesting. It's an idea of remembering who you really are, deep at heart. And with that, to arouse the love to the oneness of Hashem, which that love of Hashem is hidden in your heart, certainly, without any doubt. And this is written with two hearts, because not only the Ava of Hashem is embedded deep in your heart, also fear of Hashem, which is the Hainu Shalol Yepored B'Shum Oifen Miyechude V'Akdusei Yisborach. And this is important because you'll find that the way I usually translate Yiratata, the fear, the lower level of fear, is the fear of separation, like a fish fearing to come out of water because the fish knows that if he comes out of water, he's going to die. So this is, as he says, the fear to be separated in any manner from the oneness of Hashem. Not only love of Hashem, the desire to be close, but fear of Hashem, the fear to be separated. So both of them, he says, are implanted in a person's heart, are hidden in a person's heart without any doubt. To cling to Hashem Yisborach, to the blessed God, afilu b'mesiras nefesh, even if it's a case of giving away your life, mamish, bli shum tam v'seichel musag, giving away your life without any understanding. This is what we spoke about Avodah Zorah, that a person has we'll call it an instinct, but it's a godly connection, deeply buried in oneself, the instinct to not bow down to Avodah Zorah, even if they point a gun at your head. And this is in one's nature, sunken into one's nature. The word tava is brought in Chassidus a few times that I've seen, but often about the Yetzias Mitzrayim, when they were the chariots of Hashem were tuba'u v'yam suf, they were sunk in the sea. We have something sunk deep within us that never do we ever willfully, never will we willfully take ourselves apart from Hashem. It's sunk into our nature. And if it's a heavy thing like giving your life up for Avodah Zorah is sunk, planted deep in your heart, deep in yourself, how much more so the ability and the nature to break any desires that you have, desires which are lighter than death. Well, he doesn't say more. This is what the pasuk goes on. One needs to know. This thing is very close to you. Yeser, much closer. Likoresh hayetzer, right? To be able to subjugate and vanquish ultimately the Yetzer, but to subjugate, to do battle with it and conquer it. And that's the notion of turning away from evil. Even if it's something you say, it's a very light thing, it's only from the Sefer, from the Rabbanan. The nature of a Jew is that there's a natural, implanted, I would want to use the word implanted rather than natural, implanted ability and awareness of, no, I'm not going to do anything that's against God's will. Never to transgress God's blessed will. Because if you do so, you're separating yourself from God's singularity and his oneness, just like you were doing, God forbid, Avodah Zorah mamish. At the time of doing something that's even maybe a light there, that is producing, in other places, and particularly in the Geras HaKodesh and many Maimonim, the difference, the mitzvahs are likened to 613 strands of ligaments and connections to Hashem. And when you do Avodah Zorah, that's a big one. It cuts a lot of those strands. But if you do even a light one, and even a mitzvah midrabanan, you're affecting the connection of even perhaps one of those strands. B'shas ma'aseh, at the time of deed. And even the most serious ones, which cut a lot of those strands are able to be reconnected and healed through the process of Shuvah. But even if one says, I will sin and then I'll do Shuvah, and it says, Ein maspeaking, they don't give him sufficient capability to do Shuvah, it means they don't make it easy for him to do Shuvah. But if a person is under farkeretched times, but rather than turning away, he seizes the moment, and he does Shuvah. So Chazal said, there's nothing that stands in the way of Shuvah. So even a very serious son, where on the one hand it says, if one says, look, I'll do the sin and I'll rely on Shuvah, no, they're not going to make that easy for you. But it's still possible, because ein dover oimid b'fnei hashuvah. Even if you sin with the idea that you'll do Shuvah afterwards, if you do a deep enough Shuvah, you'll be returned. The wholeness will be returned. The strands will be healed. Nevertheless, Kol Yisrael muchen u'mezumen limser nafshe al kedushas Hashem. In all cases, a person, even the deep giving up your life, is something that one, because of one's deep connection with Hashem, one is willing to give up our life. It's always there. Muchen u'mezumen. It's present, it's prepared, and it's always ready to give up one's life for the holiness of Hashem. Not to bow down to Avodah Zorah, even for a moment. When it comes to this, it wouldn't cross one's mind. I mean, he's saying this is the capability that we have, that it wouldn't cross your mind whatsoever to think, I'm going to bow down to Shuvah, to Avodah Zorah, because I like to, and I'll do Shuvah later. I know, why not? Because of the light of Hashem, which is enclosed in your soul. And this is a definition of korav elecha. What it means that it's close to you, it doesn't mean it's easy. Right? He says at the beginning, it's a derech arucha. It's a long way, but it's the pathway. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it means it's there. It's korav. It's deep down inside of you. It's malubish v'nafshim kanal. Because this that's deep within you, excuse me, is not subject to time. It's not in the dimension of time. It's beyond time, before time. Higher than, much higher than, deeper than time. And this pintalayid, that's what it is after all, this connection to Hashem be'achdus, with the Hashem echad, and to Hashem oneness, is dominant, is there inside of you, B'shalit u'mashal olav, and can be what is the dominant force within you, and evidently all the time. That was Shabbos. That's we talked about, doing something negative. Similarly, now this same force, this source which is deeper than one's chokhmah, the source which ultimately comes from the Ein Sof itself, also applies to bechinas, the positive things. Bechinas v'asei tev. For instance, l'sgave ka'ari begavura, to strengthen oneself like a lion, like a strong lion, like a lion with one's gevura, with one's power, v'oimes olev, and the strength of the heart, neged hayetzer, against the yetzer hara, hamachbiras nafshe, which brings a heaviness. And this is depression is the worst, because when you get heavy of heart, that's when you start getting slothful. It leads from heaviness of heart, you get lazy, and laziness leads to sloth. So the Yetzer Hora is bringing you down. Okay, it's negative, but one has the ability to stand against that nature, hamachbid, which makes the soul heavy, which makes the body heavy, or mapel, and makes darkness over the person. I love and uses the word sloth right here, etzla, and brings a person down into sloth. That's from Mebichinas Yosoit Ha'ofer Shebenefesh Shebahamis. That bringing one's down, just like the dirt is the lowest of the low, in the hierarchy of things. So that's from the fundament of earth, which is in the animal soul. And that's what prevents a person. He's down in the dumps. He's down in the dumps of depression or feeling just low energy, and as a result, he doesn't feel the strength because he's encapsulated down in the dirt. He doesn't feel that he has the strength to lift himself up and take upon the warfare, really, and the battle of serving Hashem. And he finds this to be a very big difficulty. Kigain, he gives an example of big difficulties, or difficulties that are at least difficulties that impede one's service of Hashem. Lamal b'toyre be'in u'b'peh, right? To learn Hashem, learn Torah in a very concentrated way, and not just to gloss over it. Lepasik pumiyam agis, or to be in the level that we had back at the beginning of Tanya, that Tzaddik said his mouth never stopped learning Torah. But a person can feel like, okay, I've done enough for today, but there's always more to do. Excuse me. La'olam yosim odem atzmei al divrei Torah kishor la'oil. A person should put his shoulder to the wheel in terms, and he's speaking about learning Torah, like an ox to the yoke. Like a donkey to his load. Became the tefillah, and like it was also like tefillah b'kavana. One can pray, gloss over all the language, all the words, and not throw oneself into it, to pray with kavana, called koiche, with one's entirety of power, mamish. And also in all the other things that have to do with avodas Hashem, shehu b'davar shebamammon tzedakah, kamei avodas tzedakah, as he says, ukayetzi ba'elu, and other things like this, which are situations, all the situations where one person has to strengthen himself and do a bit of warfare. Milchomes hayetzer. This is the war of the Yetzer Hara, the Tachbaloisov, and the war against the tricks of the Yetzer Hara, which the Yetzer Hara is the Kara Nefesh Adam. The Yetzer Hara cools off the soul of a person. Shelela Hafkid Mamoine, that he doesn't give away his money. Ubrius Gufoy, and he says, I don't feel too well, I'll stay in bed today. And these are the tricks of the Yetzer, which stand against a person. And a person has to fight against that and overcome them. You should know that this is korid ma'od. This is very close to a person. Ela Adam. Kishiyas, when is it close to you? Right? If it's so close to you, why don't I feel this way? Why do I feel it's a little too much for me? When a person yasim el liboy, when a person gives his heart over and realizes that these are the tachpalois of the tricks of the Yeser, and does a battle against the Yeser. As much as you have to do, and exerting a little bit more, I'm putting it a little bit more, and exerting yourself even more, to do opposite what the Yetzer Hara is telling you is actually accessible to everybody, is kal ma'od, very easy to do, because if you're going to give your life up for Avodah Zorah, these things we've been talking about are much easier than Misa Hashem, to die for Hashem. Yishmerenu, Hashem protect us so we don't be challenged with having to give up our life for Hashem. Yisure Misa, and have the afflictions of death. Hashem Misa, Hashem Yishmerenu, Hashem should protect us. And a person, it's very hard to say this because thank God none of us have known this, but a person apparently, when put to the shove of giving for doing something that's chayav misa, like Avodah Zorah, a person will willingly do it. He'll do it mekabel ba'ava. He'll receive these things, this death that he has to do, because this is an expression of keeping his connection with Hashem. He'll do it ba'ava u'baratzon. He will do this with love because he doesn't want to be separated from the unity and the oneness of Hashem, even for a moment, to bow down to Avodah Zorah, Has v'sholem. How much more so? If you'll do that, how much more so are you able to receive with love and willingly, because to keep your connection with Hashem forever. Dahainu, for instance, that if you, instead of allowing oneself to be cut in the dross, in the mud, and as you called it, down in the earth, the earthiness, and trapped down below in the clutches of the Yetzer, but instead, and you do what Hashem wants you to do through the avodah, whatever avodah is in front of you to do, that will reveal within you the panimis ratzon elyon, the inner dimensions of the supernal will, b'achiras panim. In other words, God will shine His face upon you. So that connection which you always have within you will not be what he called, by the way, back in the previous chapter that you mentioned, in a state of gullus. It will be in a state of redemption, with gili rav, and with great revelation, v'leba hester klal, and one's essential connection to godliness, and the godliness which is the root of one's existence will not be concealed at all. And when there is no concealment of God's will, because you are willfully using your will to connect with His will, then there's nothing separating the two of you. The two of you are what? Two of you. You and God are one. That sense of you being separate from Him is gone. And then, the life force of the godly soul and the animal soul and all their garments, all of them will be in a complete state of unity with the supernal will, with the ordainings of Baruch Hu, as we've said above. And up above, meaning in the inner dimension of things, nothing is ever separated from Hashem, right? Not everything is only ein od milvadoi, right? Except that in the lower realms, that sense of there is nothing but Hashem is obfuscated. It's a little bit, it's dimmed even to the point of darkness. But when you take your inner, your panemius yid, your nefesh elokis, the pintel yid, and connect it with the pintel of God, which is God's will, so yichud zeh l'maylo hu nitzchi, you're connected yourself with your essential and his essential eternality. L'olam voed. Because he himself and his will is higher than time. And also the revelation of his will, which is expressed in God's speech, which is the Torah, is nitzchi, is eternal. That the speech of Hashem stands forever. And his words are eternal. And they never get turned over, they never get literally exchanged, but they're always there in place. And his excuse me. And they never get, literally the word is bitter, but they never get adulterated in any way. And they are there forever and ever. And when you find a way, when each one of us finds a way, first of all, knowing, this is the fundamental thing, knowing that we can never be separated from Hashem because of our nefesh elokis, but the awareness of that may be buried, obscured, which we call gullus, the ability to connect with it and to bring out its previously camouflaged or covered over force is always there. That's the definition of korav elecha hador ha'ma'od. The thing is always korav. Remember, I've been telling you a few times, korav is lashon kirbayim, intestines. It's in your gut being the root of your soul, to always be aware and to live with the connection to Hashem.